Today we're taking a look at the Paper80 by Wuche Studio, and trust me, this one has a really special case design. According to the current keyboard trend, some would say this keyboard might be a little pricey, but let's jump straight into it and I'll introduce it to you. I have two PCBs, both of them have 5-pin south-facing hot swappable sockets, but the main difference between these two, flex cuts. One of them has a bunch of flex cuts and the other has absolutely no flex cuts at all. To follow up with that, I have two plates. Our FR4 plate with a bunch of flex cuts and an aluminum plate with no flex cuts. So very clearly, we'll be doing two different builds. Now let me introduce the case. This is what caught my eye when I first saw the Paper80. The case I opted for is the white variant and we have a nice accent logo right above our arrow keys. Our side profile comes off really sleek, and now as you can see at the back, we have this beautiful weight which actually protrudes out of the board to give the board its angle. Basically a typing angle, but it's a weight, which is very cool. Anyway, we have our foam in our case, which includes PE, case and PCB foam. The case has an extremely clean design, so there are no screws at the back. It's 6 screws on the front holding it together. On our bottom housing, we actually have a RGB module. Basically, this RGB shines through the bottom and the sides of the case. So now that we know the parts we're working with, let's start on our first build. For the first build, I'll be going with the typical creamy, talky sound profile. So let's work with the PCB with flex cuts. Which means after installing our PE foam, we install our screw-in stabilizers, plate foam, and of course the FR4 plate. For switches, I'm trying out these switches I saw on a YouTube short. These are called the HMX Hibiscus switches. From what I've heard, these are supposed to give off a really talky, creamy sound profile, which is exactly what we're going for. But I only got 70 of them, so I can only fill up like this area, which is all we need honestly, so we'll know how the keyboard sounds. Anyway, these hibiscus switches are a 5-pin linear switch, and out of the box they do feel really smooth. As for the switch installation, it went really well, especially with the amount of flex cuts that were on this plate and PCB. I was kind of worried, but the flex cuts aren't over the top, it's pretty simple. To finish up the PCB sandwich, the keyboard actually uses a silicone gasket mount which we will slot right in. Afterwards, we install our daughter board, plug the cables in, install our PCB foam, and finish up the build with some keycaps. GMK Serenity. I decided it would go pretty well with the overall theme of the board, especially with the beautiful PVD weight. Now, I usually would show the first typing test, but I decided why not compile everything together, so I'll be working on the second build. And since we already roughly know the internals of the board, I'm gonna go a little quicker on this one. Now we're working with a PCB with no flex cuts as well as an aluminum plate. With these two parts, it would only make sense that I go for that clacky, poppy sound profile, which is also the exact opposite of the first build. For switches, I decided to use the HMX Hyacinth switches, 5-pin linear switch. They give off that clacky, poppy sound profile which we are looking for. And since we do not have any flex cuts, we should be able to run it completely foamless. I'm talking zero foam, no PCB foam, no PE foam, no plate foam. And honestly, this is one of the easiest keyboards I have built foamless. But for this keyboard, completely without flex cuts and running it foamless, installing the switches is something I would think even a beginner could do. For keycaps, I decided to use the PVD Fans Klein Blue keycaps, which is what you see right here. And that is our second build. So here's the sound test. I don't know about you guys, but I actually really like this board. The building experience, the sound profile, the aesthetics, it's all done really well. It's basically the basics of modern day and old school keyboards combined into a single keyboard that has everything done up perfectly. Like, I can't find any fault with this. The keyboard is able to handle a foamless build really well. It's able to handle the modern day trend of creamy, talky sound profile. We can still achieve that clacky sound profile. With all the parts provided, the building experience for either one of those sound profiles was extremely enjoyable. Now for the price of this keyboard, I wouldn't exactly say a beginner would get it, right? Because currently we can find bots at $100, we can find bots at $80, we can find bots at $150. So something above $200 might seem a little pricey to you guys. Which is why I think this is the perfect keyboard for those who already own a $100 to $150 keyboard and want to upgrade and want to build your own. So if you're interested, I'll link it down below. But aside from that, thank you so much to lewisstohh Studio for sending this keyboard over. This is not sponsored. They didn't pay me to say the keyboard is good. Alright? Not sponsored. Comment your thoughts on this keyboard down below. So yeah, like this video if you enjoyed this video, subscribe if you enjoyed my content, and I'll see you guys in the next one.